Hello, I'm Andrew Lawrence King, and it's now the end of my first week as composer in residence at the Arvo Pärt Centre in Estonia. I'm there to write the libretto and compose the music for a new Baroque opera, the play of music and time, an explorer's guide to early opera. Paradoxically, at the end of this first week, my task of composing the opera has become much harder. That's not a bad thing. The idea for this project began as an introduction for children, for young people, modelled on Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf and on Benjamin Britten's Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, an introduction to early music. It connected nicely into my academic research on the nature of time and how that influences musical rhythm. One of the key concepts is the idea of the music of the spheres, the idea that the perfect movement of the stars and heavenly bodies creates a kind of heavenly music. We don't hear it here on earth, we're too imperfect, but it's there. And this cosmic music is reflected in microcosm, in the harmonious nature of the human body. And this is what we imitate when we play and sing actual music. In many of the early operas, the plot takes up the Orfeo, the Orpheus myth. And that's something I wanted to follow in my opera too. Of course, this myth was seen at the time as an allegory of the incarnation of Christ. In a wider sense, the Orpheus story, the journey into hell and the return, successful or not, this is seen as an allegory of a journey and related therefore to that other great myth of Ulysses. Of course, those are the first two operas that we have by Claudio Monteverdi, Orfeo and Ulisse. An important theme around the year 1600, as our opera is starting, is the idea of the power of music. And of course that's crucial in the Orpheus story, the power of music to persuade. In the historical science of this period, movement, the movement of the stars, produces music. Movement also is essential for time in the Aristotelian concept of time as a number of movement in respect of before and after. So as well as having the music of the spheres, we can think about having the time of the spheres, heavenly time, which we feel in the physical rhythms of the human body and that we imitate in our music making. Another set of three related elements, heavenly, human and actual, is what we might nowadays call emotion. At the heavenly level, this is not a fleeting feeling, but a lasting quality, something that really is. At the human level, it's the psychological, spiritual, intellectual, the comprehension of emotion. And at the actual level, it's the physiological reaction, the feelings we get in the body. the feelings of emotion. Yet another set of three is linked to the period concept of what art means. Nowadays we think of art as being the inspirational, free aspect of a discipline like music or painting or architecture. But around the year 1600, art meant a set of rules. So our modern day idea that an artist should never be confined by rules, this is actually quite different to the 17th century idea. Art is a self-consistent set of rules. The ineffable mystery of music is what they called science, the study of divine things beyond the everyday. Science. And the everyday actual performance, what we do when we play music, that was called use. Science, art, and use. And so, starting with two of these sets, time and music, inevitably the connections open to movement, physical movement, the movement of emotions in our mind and spirit, and the perfect movement of the stars. We're drawn also to think about the meaning of art, the meaning of life. We're drawn to think of the concepts that Aristotle and Dante wrestled with in Aristotle's Physics and Dante's Divina Commedia. This brings us to ideas of number, light, and love. Meanwhile, in our world today, there's war. And there is the inevitable propaganda, contested facts, debated opinions. One of the main questions that we're all having to deal with is, what is truth? And so, in the context of this play, designed to introduce early music instruments to children, perhaps the three elements, heavenly, human, and actual, are truth, music, and musical instruments. So, back to my first impression of a week at the Arvo Pärt Centre. The centre is a wonderful place to do creative work. It's quiet, it's connected to nature. But it is impossible to be there and not to be drawn to that central point of the highest sphere, that heavenly perfection that Dante described, outside of which everything else is imperfect. And outside the serene sphere of those walls, war is raging in Ukraine. Through what hell does the pathway lead? So, paradoxically, my first week at the centre has made it much harder for me to create this opera, because my initial ideas about time, music, and life have been led irresistibly into a search for a more profound truth. What I compose here will have to be better, perhaps better structured, probably better sounding, and above all, more communicative. That's why my task has become more challenging. Meanwhile, writing for children as the audience, this deep content can be rich, but the surface words must be simple. I think the key to that puzzle is play. Children's playfulness, actors playing their characters, musicians playing their instruments. So if this project is ever going to fly, my motto has to be simplificate and add lightness.